Anyway, I'll tell this story. Hopefully you'll get the AV back up because it's critical. And what happened is he went to Fort Knox and, did the intake and all that. I'm pretty sure because he had family members, grandfather, father, uncles, who had worked in these very sensitive projects. He didn't know the details. He just knew they had dealt with a lot of very sensitive material since World War II. Because even in families, this is not talked about, and they're not allowed to. And what happened is he joined. He was going to be a tank operator. And I think the sign-on bonus was $8,000, he said, $8,000 then. And instead, he got picked out, went to another room, and there was a guy in there and says, we want you to work on a special operation. And we will put $80,000 in your bank account. And it was, 20 years ago, fair amount of money. And in real time did so, boom. But you're going to be working on helping us retrieve. Now the cover story was, we have aircraft, helicopters, jets, what have you, that will have a mishap and crash. And you have to have top secret clearance because some of the components of those aircraft are classified and we don't want our foreign enemies to know them. So he said, okay. So he went through a training process for that. I won't go into all those details. We have all the details, but to get cut to the chase, at some point he was deployed up to the Nevada test range. Now, pop culture, Area 51 in Nevada. Just so you know, Area 51 is a grid on a map. There's also Area 52, et cetera. So the Nellis Range and Air Force Base, and then going further north, you get the Nevada test site, all that, where a lot of the atomic weapons were tested, et cetera, right? Everybody know that. So they were on a remote site. You see his drawing of it, of that facility. So what I'm going to do, thanks to Michael Schratt and his team, and Michael's here, thank you, great guy, rely on him totally. And also, I want to acknowledge Jim Goodall. He's here. Great aerospace writer, illustrator. He was one of the last men to talk to Ben Rich at Lockheed Skunk Works. And as you know, got this story. He said, beyond what in Star Trek and Star Wars or whatever, it's out in the desert. And when he wasn't talking about Area 51, he was talking about the Lockheed facilities and others. This man, of course, thinking he's embedded initially in this retrieval, they did that. There'd be a chopper crash or a jet or, whatever, Hornet. And they would get the components, and there were different people. And some were dealing with the larger airframe, some with bigger parts, and he was there to scrub the site. They had metal detectors, and they go around. He said it was basically a high-tech garbage man, picking up any little thing that would be left, and nothing was left, nothing. So eventually they get called out and get deployed up to this base. So it's way far north. You go up, SUVs take you into a gate not manned. There are RFID chips to enter, and you go through, and then the Humvees take you out to this helicopter base, which is up on your screen. Now, a clearer drawing of it is what Michael did, Michael Schratt, and you see it here. So you have the layout, the basic layout of this, and we have all the intelligence on its location, what have you. You see the dirt road off to the right and the gate. And there are hangars, 2 Quonset type hangars with helipads outside, and a formation area, garage, C-cans, which are on the CH-47, big choppers, and what have you. And he very funnily says, leper colony or cancer factor where you could go and smoke. So that's just the layout, because he remembered the layout of the facility. And then he sort of said, I want to show you what the inside. So then we have this next one, which the next drawing of inside one of these. And you can see it's very hard, but you'd have the sea cans and the helicopters and other stuff in one of these big Quonset huts. But it was huge, and it was almost like a football stadium inside, vaulted ceiling, et cetera, and so on. And this actually was, I'm sorry, a later thing. We'll get to that. But the underground is another underground base. And then the first thing he sent out on, so they're thinking it was, full alert. They're led in by Apaches, Hellfire missiles on them. And then these big Chinooks and the CH-47s, they get on with the Delta Group. He called it Delta Group. That were the elite. And then there are the worker bees, which he was part of. And then they were deployed up to the northern, way out north on the range. At that point, is there a problem? So let's have a seat and not be talking during the presentation. Thanks. So what happened is that, he thought, well, we're going to go out and retrieve a downed jet or chopper that malfunctioned. No. So what you see here is his drawing as they came up on this object. And it was a disabled, man-made UFO. And I know it's hard to see this is his drawing. The reason I'm putting his drawings in, because it gives the verification of then the artist rendition. That the next slide you'll see is what, the representation, beautifully done, of this craft that was on the desert floor, non-functional. So this obviously had to be extracted and brought back. But this was, again, a manned device. It was not, you can see there are seams, there are rivets. Very important for you CE5 folks to understand this. The ones that are interstellar, very different. These are obviously man-made, but they're magnetic propulsion field, electromagnetic field propulsion. Some call it electromagnetogravitics. When they're operational, he says all you would hear is a hum, like a transformer. Because they have no jets, they have no rockets, there's no exhaust, etc. So that's what this was. And so this was the first unconventional, let's call it, object that he was deployed to retrieve. And this particular craft, they had to get out of there, very carefully and move back to, and he honestly would not know where they were finally sent back to, but it was somewhere down in the Nellis facility. So at this point, he realizes, well, I'm really doing something here, and of course they were all isolated. They lived underground at that base where the quarters were. When they first got there, it was very dusty, like that particular base had not been used for a while. And this is in 2004. So that first event was April 2004, about 18 years ago. And so when, he realized that this is what he was doing with it, well, I'll do it. He was, a soldier, and the team that he was embedded with were very highly disciplined. He was not clear to know who deployed them, where things ended up. He was just there as a worker. Okay, so I want to be very clear on what his role was. He was not senior in the chain of command on that. And this next picture is an image, and you'll see the representation next, of this craft and how it really looked like by Michael Schratt. Excellent. Now, of course, we can study these for hours, so this is a big story to get through. And what I find very interesting is that you look at all the rivets in the sections, he makes the point, a no-step marking. Well, an interstellar vehicle doesn't say no step here. That dog don't hunt, as we say in North Carolina. a blinking red light and green light. And this is, not unlike the sort of triangular craft that you've seen the fraudsters like Luis Elizondo and others that are leaking these items that you see on CNN and 60 Minutes and maybe Vice TV. And of course, the media doesn't know enough not to know that those are ours over our ships. Well, there's a nav light on that sucker, and you get close enough to it, you see this kind of superstructure details, rivets, struts, parts. Actual interstellar vehicles have none of that. And they certainly aren't marked no step. Now, the biggest part of the secrecy on this subject, they're happy for people to think there are ETs or aliens out there. They really don't want people to know this. This is the heart of the secrecy, because it is only by keeping this under wraps from the president, from the senators, and particularly the Fourth Estate, the media. It's really the media that have dropped the ball on this. No offense to my friends in the media. Because they're basically become scribes taking dictation from the right hand of the king, meaning whatever is told to them, instead of doing actual investigations and checks and balances. Big problem. Big problem in an alleged democracy. So as you look at this schematic and you say, well, a lot of people have seen these silent triangular objects. Are all of those man-made? No. There are some that are 800 feet, 3 football fields on a side, ones that we had over us in Belgium back when in the early 90s when I went there. So there are ones that look like, and they're kind of copycat. But what better way to deceive the public? So you take a shape that they have retrieved through electronic warfare systems that are extraterrestrial, and then you make airforms in any shape you want around a similar propulsion and energy system. It's a classic misdirect, false flag. So that's why you need to know this. And not only does the public need to know it, I hope this mic isn't falling down. Huh? Okay, no, there's one, I have 3. But people put tape on me, and they don't realize I'm furry, kind of like your dog. I love dogs. Who's your doggy? My wife gave me a magnet. It says, who's your doggy? I'm like a big dog. Anyway. I know, it's so cute. So the whole point of this schematic is to give the detail that's in his drawing. This is why Michael Schratt, thank you, he's done such a great job with the beautiful professional work. And when you look at these, you realize that it's very easy to deceive. I don't know if there are 10 people in the government of the United States that you can name who would know anything about this, and I doubt there are 10. Now there's a problem, because that means that they are subject to a deceptive operation, what the Pentagon calls a deceptive indication and warning, which is the proper term for a false flag, where something could be done and it would look like it's an attack or an event or a threat from out there, and it's this clandestine, beyond black, above top secret operation who is actually deceiving everybody. And imagine you're a jet pilot, like I spoke with David Fravor, who was the guy who was the Hornet F-18 pilot, chased the Tic Tac off the coast of California. You've all seen it. And he said, no, there's just no way that could be ours. It was a Lockheed object. But of course, if you're read into jet engines or rockets or what have you, you're not going to be read into this. But that's dangerous, because if you're a flag officer, and people I have briefed, if you have top secret clearance, you're managing the black budget of the United States, this is who I've met with, and over the years, you're the director of the CIA, you're the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, you're the head of Intelligence Joint Staff, et cetera. I've met with all these folks. And you are not read into this. It's very easy to have something terrible happen, because you don't have the information and the knowledge to make an assessment. You can't discern. Is it a threat from outer space, or what? Now, in most cases, 99.9999999% of the cases of everyone I've briefed in Washington or in other locations, including members of Congress since the early 90s, they're not even aware to ask that question. The correct question isn't being asked. Not by the mainstream media, not on Fox News the other night, not by the UFO subculture, and not by the senators and congressmen or the parliaments around the world. And without that knowledge, they're flying through a fog of no information with no radar, no instrumentation, and they can hit whatever thing comes up, metaphorically. And that's the risk. This kind of secrecy that surpasses the Constitution, chain of command, and rule of law is an existential threat to our country, to every other nation on earth, and to the future of humanity. Because